Previously, we were able to produce a landscape design where if we selected a plant symbol, let's take this example here. The symbol is a block. It has a name, Viola heteracea, but down here in the properties box under SPP tag, it has the botanical name and the common name and a code. That's what enables us to generate this plant schedule here. The schedule is in fact a block. Let me delete it and let's maximize this view, and let's go to gCADPlus to plant schedule, and we're going to draw a standard schedule, and we're asked for the input height of the text down here in the command area. Let's reduce it to 150 and let's simply draw a rectangle. The schedule is drawn and it gives you the botanical name, common name and total in alphabetic order of the botanical name. So all the information is there. But in fact, if you notice here, the design, there's only one instance of that symbol there, that Victorian Waratah. And the reason there is that it's also sitting down here in the legend. So if we now remove that legend, because the information that we really need is carried here in this plant schedule, it's got the symbol and the botanical name. It's in fact the second to last entry here, and there are two. If we go gCADPlus and plant schedule and just update it, now we get the correct number in the design. Well, let's return to our developing drawing, and I'll minimize this one and maximize the one we've been developing. And let's see if we can now tag a botanical name to a symbol. In order to do that, we need to attach what's called a plant database file to this design. To do that, or to make a new plant database file, we'd use a tool here, create a GCP file, but I have already begun completing this one. I'll just show you what it looks like when we attach it. So we attach it, and I'm going to go into this folder, and we've called it JRO plant database. Now the database file is just a very simple text file, and it shows botanical name, common name, type, code, pot size, and you can have all sorts of other information in a custom cell, but for the moment we'll just concentrate here. Notice firstly, so each row is a record, and each record is a particular botanical species, botanical name, and the names are underlined, and that's done to help landscape designers, because once you know that you have correctly spelled that particular botanical name in the record, you just add it to the dictionary that accompanies your copy of gCADPlus. We also know that latifolia is correct, and we can add it. We know these are correct because we've looked in maybe from past experience, or we've checked them. We've got a spelling error here. It should be a blueberry. And the moment I click away from, there's no red underline there because gCADPlus knows that's a correct spelling. And I could go on, but it's really useful. Nothing worse than working with a client who has a fair degree of botanical knowledge and you misspell plants in the design. So we have this little plant database. It's just a text file. That's all it is, with some rows and columns. One thing I should have mentioned is that your We'll edit it. Your text file will become very long. We provide one with gCADPlus that's over 500 entries, but you can search. If you wanted to search by common name, you could just click in there. Now the database is organized on botanical order of common name, and again back to there. We could also, if you want to look for all the climbers and grass-like specimens, ground covers and so on, just sort and you can find instances of them. You've got tools for adding columns and so on. You can even do pot size and cost if you're costing a design. So we now have a little database attached to this particular drawing. So if we wanted to at this stage, we've got the database attached, and we can say gCADPlus set data to a plant. And if we click here, that immediately pops up the list. It's very easy with this one, the Victorian Waratah. So we just click it and we say, okay. This one over here is a Dicksonia. And you can see this one is highlighted. So we can say, okay. No selected row. I forgot to click it. Now we're right. This is a blueberry, not blueberry. I thought we had corrected that. We can't correct it in this one here, but we can do that. And there. Let me just fix that error. And I did think that we had. So edit it. Blueberry. And enter. And save it. Now I hope that that particular error has been fixed. And what else have we got? A dichondra. So add plant data is the command. Dichondra. And we even have a tool to say gCADPlus show symbols with names, and you can see they're all labeled correctly. And usually there seemed to be something else down here, but let's not worry about that just for the moment. Now let's test it. We'll say gCADPlus, we know how to do this, run or draw the standard schedule, and it remembers 150. So let's see if we can draw it in much the same spot. How did we do? Well, it did quite well. Gave us the information that we wanted. The text style is not the same as it was in the other one. Let's switch to the other one and let's pick here. This is in a text style called gCAD. If we go to Format Text Styles, gCAD is the current one. That's got the tick by it. gCAD is the current text style in a font called Century Gothic. Let's see if we can replicate that. We'll come back to Format Text Styles. We'll do a new one. Can we pick Century Gothic? We can, and we'll OK it. Good idea to rename it. Give it the same name as the font and make it current. Let's draw the plant schedule again. And that works nicely. So we are well on the way to tagging all the symbols. Tag this one, it's a Dianella. Click that fellow. It's a dichondra, and so it goes. Well, here's our developing drawing. I've added the missing tagged to symbols, And the last one I've just been working on is Hardenbergia violacea, and what I now want to do is to update. We're missing that from the plant schedule, so let me draw that plant schedule again. The text on, I'm making 100 units, corner point here. I'll make it a little bit smaller, and there we are. If I swing back to our target design, I think we've now got them looking quite similar. Let me go back again to our new one where we're trying to help someone just starting out with gCADPlus to manipulate and get things into a point where they can get a sample of the design to the client, and I think that looks good. If we go view, background color and white, there we are. We've got a plant schedule here and the design there. We usually pick the plant schedule and move it some distance away from the design, and I'll show you why in a short time. Because it's now time, I think, looking at the design to see if we can give some texture to this design. I'll swing back to background color of black because it is a little kinder on your eyes, and most experienced drafters work this way. They have a black background in the model and a white background in the plotting zone. And perhaps before we deal with putting some texture on that dry stone wall, let's see what this design would look like, say, on an A3 sheet. To do that, you go Format and Layouts. We form a new layout by this from this window, and that click that little button, and we want it in landscape, and we just said we'd like an A3 sheet. So now it's going to do an A3 in landscape mode, and we'll say OK. Notice down here the little tab changes to layout, and there we have our layout showing. And in order, we want to zoom in on it and to get a better view, I'm going to take off. Notice the grid has been turned on automatically. I'm just going to take that off. Imagine layout's really like a porthole into the design, and we can position our view of any porthole or several portholes if we want by double clicking. That pops up this magenta box. What I'm going to do now is just size it and center it, making sure we've got all of our important parts, and then we just display them. So there's our design. We can probably go back to layout now and move these two a little closer, and we can probably, I think, that north point dominating. So we'll make that 0.5 in the X and 0.5 in the Y. And now let's go back into our layout, and I think we could increase the zoom factor, if you like, by double clicking, make our view quite a lot smaller, come across here, and we're going to miss the north, but we'll bring that just above the scale bar, I think, and right click, display it on the layout. To get rid of the dotted line, just come in close to it and double click. We'll come back here to the model and move that quite close there. Then we'll grab both of those and move those like so, because the focus of the design has got to be on the garden bed. And we'll double click again. Well, I don't need to double click. I think that looks pretty good. Maybe one last, center it like so and display on the layout. This area here is known as a floating viewport. Notice up in the properties box it tells you something about it, and it also gives us a scale. The viewport itself has a view scale, and it's 65 at the moment. if we can extend that floating viewport to match the sheet, and we can, if we need to print to an exact scale, we could actually see how a scale of 1 to 50 might work, and it very nearly fits. So I'd be inclined to leave it at that and just move our scale across. Display on the layout, double click in there, come back into the model, and we'll move these from there to there, and we should now, when we return to layout, have everything that we need. So we have our design, no lettering yet, our scale and our north indicator, and it's a 1 to 50 scale. If we print, go zoom extents, and we print that out, and that can be printed in a couple of ways. We can say file and print and go to whatever printer happens to be attached to the computer, and this is in fact a black and white monochrome printer. That would not do, but we could go file and print, and we could change our printer to any virtual printer that we've got, and we favor using gCADPlus, which is a free virtual printer, and that will give you a PDF version of the design, and that can be at very high resolution if you need. But we can also go file and save as a PDF, and I'll start with high resolution and a window, and OK that, and just put a box around the design. And you can see I've been experimenting, just one called Garden CAD, and that'll give me a very quick PDF version of the design, and I think you would agree the resolution there looks pretty good. And I come back to the design. I mentioned that we might see if we can give some texture to this dry stone wall. That's done with what's called the hatch command. If we're going to hatch an entity, it needs to be a closed entity. And we showed earlier in this series that if we pick, say, an arc, and notice I've got the single shift on, so now I've changed that, and I should be able to pick the two arcs, the horizontal line, that little bit at the end, and then the base. All items, all entities are now selected, and we should be able to join them. Now they are a closed entity around the outside, and there's similarly, we missed this one, around the inside. So we should, with gCADPlus's hatch command now, be able to, it works a number of different ways. We could hatch this closed entity here, or we could hatch that one, which we'll do in a moment, to give the hatch, we'll hatch and form some mulching there. But what we can do with a hatch is to pick a zone, and gCADPlus will radiate out and find that zone. So we'll try and demonstrate that first. So we'll go draw and hatch, and I've chosen a flagstone pattern for sake of any other. We'll try any old. We'll find a suitable pattern in a little while, but we just want to make sure that our geometry is right. It's a good idea to start the hatch scale relatively large to start with. If I pick a point, gCADPlus should be able to radiate out and find that the edges or the zone, and it's gone away, and it's going to take quite some time, I think, and I may have the wrong value there. I wonder if we can just hit escape, and we can. What I'll do, I'll be quite cautious, and maybe you might start working this way. We're going to hatch, we'll pick just simple lines. Not many lines, but just parallel lines. We'll just use that, and again we'll go quite high. We'll go 100, and we'll pick the point. I'm hoping that gCADPlus this time can radiate out and find those. And again, it should happen instantly, and it's not. So I'll escape again from there. And I'm checking over here that we've got a closed entity there and a closed entity there. So our hatching is not working well. It should find that area. I'll try again, and I'll just use a solid hatch, see if it can find the area. It's good that I'm having trouble by picking a point inside that zone. This time it found that one, and can I pick that one? And we have a zone. So gCADPlus, it looks to me as though it's going to need to do a manual pick of the boundaries. So let's try again, just with our lines. So hatch, come down here. I'm sure you'll enjoy seeing me making mistakes. Where's our line? Parallel lines here. We'll try what we did before, change one thing at a time. Pick a point. So this, no, I want hatch. I want to pick an entity. So I'll pick that one and enter. Now, if we notice here, the density is 6,000, see, just arbitrary units. If I change that to 100, we get 59 lines through there. So if I change that to say 500, I'm down to 11 lines. So now we have it. So we now have the technique. What we now need to do is to find a suitable hatch pattern. And we should be able to go to the gCADPlus website and find a screen grab of all of the hatch patterns that we have stored in that hatch pattern file, and we'll find one that looks a little like a dry stone wall. Although as I look at it now, if we clicked here and changed the hatch pattern to say 100, which we were going to do to start with, or even maybe 25, we could probably leave it like that, and that gives us the impression of being a dry stone wall. We could label it. So I think I don't want to label the point going and finding that. That is the sort of thing is covered pretty well in the manual, but what you would do is change the color of the lines that are in that to something like a brown color, and that's done a good job. Again, match properties, modify match properties from this brown line. I'll make that one and that one brown. There we are. That is a reasonable representation, and all the changes we've been making flow across to this side. So we come back here into the model. I think that's enough just for the moment before we move on to the next design. What I should have mentioned to finish off with, if we go into the layout, notice we haven't got the plant schedule. But if I move down here, move our view like so, and display on the layout again, I'll zoom extents to give you a better view. You can add a new floating viewport. And if I'll draw it, little trick, I just draw it like so, and then you double click in here and we wrap a box around the plant schedule and then display it on the layout and move away. Now we have the schedule. Once we've got it positioned nicely, we can just move it away and pop it in there. It's probably, we need a little space down here for our logo and title information. So let's put it here, and we will make our colour white, the border colour white. I'll select a colour white. Now that schedule just sits nicely and will print well. Happy with that.